I'm going to give you an introduction to Figma. And this is actually part two. And the reason as to why I'm dividing these specific introductions to these specific tools is to not overwhelm you, because it doesn't really like make much sense for me to just come and I just show you all the tools you need to use at once. I show you all the techniques that you need to use at once, and then just move on to another topic without you, truly understanding how you can manipulate this tool to your own advantage. So, not to actually manipulate, but to use. Don't quote me wrong. The main reason as to why I make these tutorials is to enable you to, have a different mindset towards design, especially if at all you're starting out. Because usually tutorials are there to show you like how to throw rectangles on the canvas, give them some shadows, give them some gradients, colors, without even explaining to you what exactly are those things they are throwing onto the canvas. So, as the UX chefs, we are here to always remind you that you can actually learn better by attending these workshops, by joining the community, and by following us on all our social media platforms. So, let's jump into uh, an introduction to Figma, part two. So, but to maybe rewind a little bit, in our previous workshop, I took you through part one. In part one, I actually talked about one, the true color of this tool called Figma, and its true color is like any other tool. It's like a pen. You can have like hundreds of pens, but trust me, what you use the pen to write, like what you write with that pen is what really matters. Like it's not really the pen. Of course, some pens look nice. Some have like features that are really intriguing. But eventually, what you what you use that pen for is what really matters. It's not how good it looks like. Of course, you can actually use a pen for decoration, but decoration is not, it doesn't really bring in any value to you as as a designer. So take Figma as any other tool, like Illustrator, like Adobe InDesign, like Adobe Photoshop, like Sketch, InVision, any other tool that you can use to create, a website or a design for a website actually. Because a design for a website is not a website. You can create a design for a website in Microsoft Word or even Google Docs, and you develop it. You haven't gone into Figma. You can actually draw the design of a website on a wall, and you develop it, and it comes out very good without even touching Figma. So I'm not teaching you Figma so that you can, like take it as the sole tool that you should use to learn how to design. Remember, design is all about making people feel in a certain way. If they do not feel in a certain way, you haven't really designed, like you've done nothing. Of course, some people will tell you that design is all about providing value, but that is like the de facto reason as to why things are done, to provide value. But then user experience design is here to question and to make sure that that value is sort of like provided in a meaningful way, in a usable way, two, in a way that is understandable before even usage happens. People have to understand. If someone can't understand, they cannot use. And then, most importantly, the feeling that they'll get. So, moving on, the next point I took you through in our last workshop, when I was introducing Figma to you, I took you through the main areas and then the main tools in Figma, then the design blocks, and then lastly, I told you to focus on the bigger picture, not a tool. Now, if you want the video to part one, like a video that is going to take you, sorry, that if you want the link to that specific video, part one, of introduction to Figma, just check in the description of a specific video, and then you'll get a link, and then you'll go watch that specific video, and then you can actually come back and then continue with this specific video. So moving on, today we shall explore these areas. One, UI element properties. Two, manipulating UI elements. Why these areas? Because just like I told yesterday, which was Friday, I met with one of the community members in the UX Chefs community, and he told me that he wanted to actually improve his Webflow skills. And I realized that Webflow, although it's like Figma, it sort of like hides away like the important elements or like the important properties that would have showed you how UI elements are manipulated to form like the code that can be used to make them interactive. For example, like the CSS, and most importantly, the HTML. So Webflow hides that away, and it just helps you to place items here and there, and then manipulate them easily, just like how you would manipulate them in Figma. So I realized that for you to actually get to know the underlying way of how design elements are actually implemented, CSS wise, HTML wise, you need to first and foremost destructure your UI elements. So usually designers want to think of UI elements this way, like a whole button, a whole input field, a whole sort of like icon, a whole sort of like nav bar, whole section, a whole card. Usually designers like thinking in wholes, and it is not bad to actually think in wholes, but that thinking is not going to help you master how you can actually manipulate UI elements. To become very good at UI design, you need to first of all get to know which properties make up every UI element, and you'll find out that most of these properties are the same. You'll find out that a button, an input element, a card, they all have like text. They can have a border, they can have a fill, and they can have a shadow, which is this sort of like dark edge that you can see on this specific button. No, you have to understand that most elements share these properties, and as a designer, you need to start destructuring UI elements. You need to start destroying them. I'm not telling you to get a hammer and then you hit your computer screen so that you can destroy a specific button. For example, this button, like to hit your to hit your computer. But I'm trying to tell you to separate the properties that make up a specific button. Like, ask yourself, which properties make up a button? The text, border, field, the shadow. We also have these corners that can either be, sharp or curved. So I think you can see there are so many actually, so many properties. Moving on to other properties, you'll find out that this same button also has like a width and height. And to make things more interesting, you can manipulate these UI elements. For example, let's just use this specific file. I've created a new file here. Let's just use it for testing. UI destructuring. For testing UI destructuring. Now you have to understand that usually you can create a button from a rectangle. For example, I can have my rectangle here, and then I can add some text. Let me just add some text here, like buy, because we all want to buy something this year. I'm quite sure. Let me just make this really huge so that we can all see. Now, imagine I have such a nice button. Let me actually also make its edges curved. I think let me also make sure that I give it a very good sort of like background color or feel, and then I'll make sure that my text color is white. Now, usually designers want to think of buttons this way, like as a whole. But if I told you starting out with user experience design and UI design, you have to sort of start destructuring things out so that you can start making sure that you get to know which elements, so which properties make up a specific element. For example, if I'm to group this and I rename this as my button, usually people want to think of elements this way, like my button is a complete thing. But then they forget that a button is made up of these specific elements. For example, the border, you can actually select my button, and then I come here under the stroke, and then I can actually add a stroke, and I can actually even make it a little bit bigger. I'm actually supposed to add a stroke on this specific rectangle. Now, as you can see, let me remove this stroke on my text, and then I can actually leave this specific stroke on my specific rectangle. So let me just also change that stroke fill so that you can actually be able to differentiate to differentiate this. Let me also, I think, make it of a different color so that you can be able to differentiate things a little bit easier. So as you can see, our button has got these properties under this properties panel, because once you select something, it shows you the properties it has. I took you to this properties panel in the previous video. So you realize that you need to start destructuring. And to destructure things, you just need to think of them this way. That these are the properties that actually make up this pattern. And there are actually more properties to this. You get, there are more properties to this. So the other properties for this specific button include its height and its width. So you realize that apart from these other properties that I've showed you here, there are these other properties, for example, height and width. And for these, you need to first of all select the button, and then you'll find the height right here, and then the width under this group specific area. So you can actually input another width. Let me just input another width. For example, 800. Click enter, and as you can see, the width stretches. Or you can actually use the cursor to make sure that you stretch this. So you can also manipulate the width by maybe entering another width there and then clicking enter, or you can actually manipulate it using your move tool or your cursor. So you have to just get to know that you need to think of UI elements this way. Why? Because if you think of the UI elements this way, then you'll be able to manipulate them in a way that actually makes you a better designer. It is actually better than maybe copying buttons from somewhere else without getting to know, how can I construct my own buttons? How can I construct my own input fields so that I can be able to be in control? And once you get to know the underlying logic of these UI elements, you'll also be able to manipulate, these UI libraries. For example, Material UI, there's Anti-D, there are so many UI libraries that you can use, but it is through understanding these specific properties, these element properties, that will enable you to, become a better individual. Now, the next point is you can actually manipulate these UI elements, just like I've been showing you here. You can go ahead and actually give this button. This is it's actually a very weird button. Let's actually first put it back to our normal button that we had. That it's not weird. Let me just make sure I center that. So realize that I can actually change these properties. For example, Figma gives us a way of, first and foremost, making sure that we have, under the stroke here, we can actually make sure that our stroke can either be in the center of this specific rectangle, or it can be either in the center, or it can be inside, or it can be outside at the edge of this specific rectangle. For example, let me just zoom in here so that you can see that effect. Let me just select the rectangle and I change. Just look right here at the edge of this specific button. You're going to see that specific border actually, or stroke, moving either inside or out, depending on what you've actually selected, or in the center of the edge. So you can actually change that, or you can also change each specific fill by using this area of the fill. You can actually add a code. For example, you can add a different code here to make sure that this specific stroke changes. And as you can see, it's actually changed to that specific code. And you can also use this specific color picker right here to pick a color from your other designs, or maybe within your specific working area. Or you can use this scroller to change the type of color, or you can use this inner scroller to change the sort of like saturation, or maybe the hue of this specific color. So you can change the stroke like that, and you can actually change the feel of this specific button by selecting that rectangle, and then using these scrollers to actually change this specific button to any color that you feel like. So just come right here under the fill and then select any other color that you want, depending on the brand you're designing for. So you can manipulate all the properties that I have showed you, the border, the fill, together with the shadow. So moving on, you have to understand that every UI element behaves that way. This way I've been explaining. For example, text, you can change the text, you can change the feel of this text. As you can see, you can give it any color that you want, depending on the brand you're working on, but make sure there is high contrast, because there are people who do not have sharp eyes like the rest of us. So you have to make sure that you have your buttons having very high contrast. So you can change the color of the text. You can even give this text another stroke and change the color of that stroke, and even change the magnitude of the stroke to maybe form something else, as you can see. So I can change this and make it any color that I want. I can change the fill to any color that I also want to make something else. So it is through understanding these properties that you will break the boundaries. For example, this can actually be a button for maybe a fashion website, or maybe any website. For example, a website for a restaurant, because it's a catchy button. But you can only do this by understanding the properties of the button. But if at all you copy a button from maybe a design system and you paste it somewhere, you'll find out that all of this was done for you, and you won't have like the morale to actually do this for yourself. But if at all you understand the underlying logic, you can destructure those UI elements and actually use them to your own advantage. And moving on, you'll find out that text, buttons, input fields, cards, icons, together with actually entire pages. Because if at all I'm to create like a frame around this, then that means that this actually becomes my page, like the frame. For example, we can have like maybe input elements here. I usually want to use an input element. And then this can actually be my page. And then as you can see, there are other properties to this specific page. For example, I can actually give it a border of its own, and then give it maybe its own color. So you can play around with all of these properties that I've actually taken you through to make sure that you create custom designs to match your brand and to serve your users better, and to even improve the type of experience they're actually getting. So moving on, you have to make sure that these UI elements are joined together. So from making sure that you destructure the UI elements and finding out the other properties and manipulating them and getting to know that all UI elements share these same properties, you can later on join these properties to make sure that you form complete pages. For example, I got this from Skilla. Skilla is our sort of like design that I usually use to explain to you these specific concepts, because it's actually a very simple design that can actually enable you to understand how to destructure your UI elements, to understand them better. So use this link to get this file, make a copy. It's actually my design, so feel free to actually make a copy and then manipulate it the way you want. You can delete, add your own colors, just like I've been showing you. Play around with the properties, and then you will be able to actually improve as a designer. So just make sure that you check out this specific design. It's a very simple design, nothing complicated. No fields, not too much color. It's just black and white plus some brown to just make sure that there are different states, but it's all literally just black and white. So, and there are different shades of brown. So make sure you just check out this file to enable you to play around with the elements. Don't mind about the layout. We shall get to that part in our next workshop. So guys, in our next workshop, I'm going to be taking you through auto layout. Like after arranging these elements, I think I'll first show you how to actually arrange elements in a logical manner to make sure the spacing is right, and to make sure I show you how to improve on this specific design, because I made this design like a long time ago, a couple of months ago. So and I think it's now even outdated. So and I think I'll be improving it to make sure that you can always visit this file and improve as a designer. So make sure that you attend our next workshops that I can take you through how to join these elements, and then add auto layout, and then prototype them so that you can interact with your specific elements. So and then we shall have other tutorials to have an in-depth explanation of all these concepts so that we can actually move on. So moving on, the last part I would want to take you through is the book of the week. So the book of the week, since we've been talking about user experience research and preaching the essence of doing research and finding out how your users actually feel, we thought that this book will relate to that information very well, because it is going to show you how you can start researching in a manner that does not discourage you, by doing just enough to motivate yourself to continue doing, and to also show you results, designer results, not results for chemical engineers or mathematicians. or physicist, but designer results. How do you design? How do you do designer research? So that is what this book is going to really show you. So I read this book, and it is all about showing you the steps that you need to take to make the research that is going to propel you in the right direction as a designer. So check out this specific book. Moving on, I would want to encourage you to stay connected as designers. You need to stay connected by one, joining the UX Chefs design community. Two, you can talk to an expert. You can talk to a creative that has got industry expertise and experience, so that they can actually help you out with what starting your journey as a designer, or improving, or to make a career choice by explaining to you the different disciplines. And then you can follow us on LinkedIn and Twitter, so that you can stay up to date with the freshest user experience design insights in the industry today. So thank you so much for joining this workshop, and see you in the next workshop. Bye bye.